In this chapter, we're going to become familiar with some of the title and motion graphic options that BorisFX Continuum has to offer. We'll start off by taking a look at Title Studio. So if you're following along, what you want to do is open up the 8A Title Studio sequence, which you can find in your sequences bin. There are two clips inside on a V1 track. What we're going to do is create another track altogether to place a few Title Studio effects on as a filler. So I'm going to press Command Y to create a new video track. I'm going to make sure that that video track is monitored and targeted. And then before we add the title, I'm just going to snap in between the first and second clip with my Command key. And then we're going to click on the Add Edit button. Now that that's set up, you're going to be able to find Title Studio in the BCC 3D Objects category in your effect palette. And here's BCC Title Studio. Let's drag that filter over the first filler on the V2 track. And we can see here that we get this generic BorisFX text. And what we want to do is enter into effect mode. And first off, before we launch the Title Studio UI, let's take a look at some of the presets that we have and we can use. So if you go here to Show BorisFX Editor, on the left-hand side here, you'll see that we have a series of categories that we can choose from, and some very useful for video editing and production. Here is one setup for credit rolls, and I'll select the basic credit roll. We won't see it in the viewer, but if I press the spacebar, we'll be able to see a preview. And the great part is in the effects editor, we can actually make some basic text changes to various fields within these presets. Looking at another large category, we can see image processors. And if I click on the twirl down menu, you'll see that you have a ton. And some of these, which we used earlier, different wipe shaders. I select that, just press play here in the viewer in order to get a sense for what this title does. And all of this, we can change the text basically here. And if we need to go to advanced options, we simply click that here at the bottom. What I want to do is go to the lower third category. And I'm going to scroll down here to the bottom where there's some basic BorisFX titles. And I want to find the blind reveal blue. Let's just click on that. And we're going to use this as a template to place over our subject in the timeline. So let's first of all make sure that we have our playhead over a section where we can see this. And one thing to note, we can do here in the effects browser is see this over the background. Let's change the first text line to represent this person's name. And second, let's put in her title, Wellness Coach. Once you've finished entering the text, it's important to click on the Insert button, and you'll see here that this updates. Now, I want to let you know that if we click on the Advanced Mode button at the bottom, we go into the Title Studio UI, or we can also access that directly from the effects editor inside of Avid. Let's for now apply this and just see that all of those changes carry over into Avid. And now, hopping back into effect mode, just go into the Launch Title Studio UI from here. Again, it's the same thing as advanced mode. Here in the Title Studio UI, you want to make sure a couple things are enabled. If they're not, simply go to this color swatch just above your viewer in the composite window. Make sure you're compositing over a video. And we also want to make sure title safe is turned on. This will ensure, if I move my playhead where we see our title, this is going to fall. When title safe is turned on, we could take the on-screen controls here and move this in order to make sure that everyone will see it depending on which TV screens we're exporting to. Now I want to make some stylistic changes. And the way the Title Studio works and how these text layers and graphic assets are organized are within this little layer stack down here in the timeline. We'll see that all of these elements are within a container, and there are two containers. One is the element, which is in this case, just the line, and the next is the text to edit, and that was what we adjusted in the effects browser. I want to make a change to the Josie Smith title, so we can select that. Let's highlight the text in the text field on the top left-hand corner, and notice that right below that is a drop down here where we can choose from several different fonts versus the default that's here. So I'm going to go inside here scroll up until I see a Roboto black text. And because the text is highlighted, that updates. I'm going to repeat this step with the Wellness Coach text. I'm going to select it. And with the text selected, under here, the drop down, I'm just going to press R to go to the R section and choose a different Roboto weight, Roboto light in this case. And while we're here, there are other text properties that we can manipulate, such as tracking. In this case, I want to just spread this out so the widths of these two text elements are rather similar. When it comes to switching color and some of these other stylistic elements, so here are your basic text properties, tracking, kerning, size, as well as you can skew them, and not to mention other features. Then you have items and how the text looks. So if I go to the first tab just behind the text properties, here is the style color that's currently set to blue. And in this case, I'm just going to click on this. We'll change this to a green color. And to make sure to reuse this, I'm just going to save this as a swatch in my Mac OS color picker. You can do the same in the color picker that you're using. I'll press OK, and that now updates. I want to do the same thing to the line, which happens to be in the element folder. So let's go there. I'll twirl down the element section, and with that, just select, in this case, the material texture, where you'll see the fill color for the line. And we're just going to set that to be the same color swatch that I saved out. We'll press OK, and that will update. Now, this element happens to be animated along with our text, and we just want to be able to make a little change to it. So I want you to take a look at the transformation, or what happens to be the Y position of the line being animated, not to mention some form of its scale. And under each, whether it be a text or a graphic element that you're working with, you'll have a section called transformations available to you. And anything that has been, in fact, keyframed, you'll notice that there are little keyframe dots for it. And if you select one of them, under the controls, it will shoot you out to what's currently being affected. And in this case, this happens to be the shape. And if I take a look at some of these shape properties, the bottom quadrant of this line, or rectangle in this case, happens to be animated. Now, the great part about this is just move to the first keyframe here where I first see the shape and the bottom value set to 75. And let's just make that a bit thinner. I want to make it 68. And once I adjust that, because I'm parked on the keyframe, we can see that that animates and thins out the line nicely. I could repeat this step with the next keyframe. And I want to note that there's also an outro animation here. All of these keyframes, you can move them around in order to adjust the timing to perfection. But in my case, I want to go here to the second last keyframe here and make that adjustment to the bottom again. I'm setting it to 68. And we'll see the impact that has on our rectangle element being adjusted. I'm just going to adjust the left side of this line, and not to mention the right side. And just before I do, I'm making the value constant in this case for the adjustment. But you should see that once I made that constant, set that menu to constant for both left and right, it stays consistent throughout the entire animation. And it's good to see how this carries over on into Avid on that filler layer. So I'm going to press apply, and I'll press Shift Command F to do a full screen playback of the title animation. Then I'll click on the screen in order to exit out of that full screen animation. And one final thing with this lower third, if this is going to be useful for your production and you've made these little changes, it is worth going into your Title Studio UI again. It is worth mentioning, if I press Shift Command S, we can actually save a Title Studio project to load for later use. So that could be very helpful, not to mention saving a preset in the effects browser. In this case, I'm just going to cancel, and let's now work and see with how we can work with a Title Studio graphic from scratch just to get a flat piece of text. So Title Studio is very versatile in the fact that once I apply this now to the second filler layer on the V2 track, can also be used for the creation of 3D text. That is how it shows up by default. If I enter into the effect mode and launch the Title Studio UI, we can see that our extruded text is within a container here, along with its transformations. Now, we could change some of the properties of this, but I've found good luck in taking this existing container with the 3D text, deleting it, and from the menu with the color bars, select it and choosing flat text. Now you're going to get some flat text here in a container. Let's highlight the word BorisFX on the top left-hand corner of the interface and type in the dance. Highlight the text again, and let's choose another font. So in this case, I'm going to choose a Railway Bold. I've been using Google Fonts, which you can download for free from the web, or just choose a font that you'd like to work with. And I'm going to now increase also the tracking of this text. Now that we have this text set up, let's do a little animation for it on screen. And there are a few ways that we can go about to do this. One, inside your timeline where you have your layers, you can reveal more properties of your text and transformation items by clicking on this button. And if you keyframe elements, you'll be able to see them down here as well. What I would like to do is expand the controls here. And what we're going to do first is just set the position of our text to the top of the frame. And with that set up here at the top, I just want you to see that this keyframe menu is turned over to linear when we made that change. And over this long period of time, we've got this text animates now on screen slowly to the center of the frame. I'd like to add more keyframes here in the mix. Actually, at 2 seconds, I'm going to add another keyframe where I'm going to click the Add Keyframe button at that point in time, and then make an adjustment here to the dance layer. Now, it just so happens that I want this same Y position for when the text ends. So I'm going to select the Y position value and just copy it, Command C. And you have these keyframe navigation controls here underneath the composite window R viewer. I'm going to move to the end here. And now where I see that position Y field, just copy that over. We should see we've now got the animation that we're looking for, the text gradually dropping into place and staying there. If we need to make another change, as in this is feeling too slow, you can grab the keyframes in a number of different places in the timeline or as you see here. And just notice that I have several properties based on the method that I did of keyframing that are now active and ready for me to make changes. If you want this to now carry over into Avid, just press apply. And here we have our dance text. Worth giving that a full screen playback as well. So I'll press Shift Command F. And here is that text coming in. By the way, you can also change the keyframe interpolation to be something else like ease in and ease out. So I'm just going to click on the screen to exit full screen mode, head back into effect mode, and let's launch the Title Studio UI once again, where I'll select the dance text and then just take a look here where we see the position property Y has been lit up. And by the way, we can just select a keyframe, which will lead us to which keyframes are active. Not to mention if I click on that area, which is lit up blue, I can change it easily to ease in, ease out, and that will change that keyframe value. We now see that as we click on this keyframe, the icon has also changed. Once I apply this and head back into Avid, we'll now see that change it has on our animation. We'll have to tweak the end position value just a little bit because of that easing, but we do have the ability to do that in different windows. So that's how we can work with Title Studio inside of Avid Media Composer for creating simple elements like lower thirds, as well as our main title text and scrolling text.